Okay. Are we ready to start? Can you hear me, Adrian? All right.
Yes, I can.
All right. All right. So, hello and welcome to today's Tiger webinar sponsored by Liberty Mutual. Thank you for joining us. My name is Candy Boston, Associate Director of Reunions and Affinity Programs in the Office of Alumni Relations. Before I begin my remarks, I would like to thank our two interpreters, Catherine Kuwait and Sean Lamar, for providing their services for tonight's event, which allows all of our alumni to participate. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Sean. Additionally, we would like to encourage participants to use a computer in lieu of a phone or tablet for an optimal experience. We want you to know that the RIT Office of Alumni Relations is available to assist all Tigers in the coming weeks with a variety of needs, including new virtual content, learning opportunities, networking, and career assistance. We especially encourage everyone to connect to the RIT Alumni Association social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, where you will find up-to-date communications and opportunities to connect to other Tiger alumni in your region and your industry. Those links can be found in the chat box. Many of our RIT alumni family have asked how they can help our students at the university during these times, and we are incredibly grateful for those offers. If you're able to help, we encourage you to support the area that is of most interest to you. To give, you can use the link located in the chat box. We want to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the presentation tools. If you are joining us from a remote location and are currently signed into your company's VPN, we encourage you to close that channel during the webinar to increase the quality of the webinar transmission. The webinar platform is secure and does not require VPN access. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions for our panelists can be entered in the chat box at any time throughout the discussion. We will make every effort to address all your comments and questions throughout the webinar. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available, complete with captions, in approximately 7 to 10 days following today's event. All participants will receive an email with a link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box as well, and we will do our best to get back to you with the appropriate answers. Now, on to our webinar. In celebration of Black History Month, we are happy to welcome a food writer, certified barbecue judge, and lecturer, Mr. Adrian Miller, for a discussion about American cuisine, soul food. Adrian resides in Denver, Colorado, and has lectured around the country on such topics as Black chefs in the White House, chicken and waffles, hot sauce, kosher soul food, red drinks, soda pop, and of course, soul food. Adrian received an AB in International Relations from Stanford University in 1991 and a JD from the Georgetown University Law Center in 1995. Thank you all for joining us. Adrian, the audience is all yours.
Thank you so much, Candy. And I just want to say thank you to the RIT family for being a part of this celebration of soul food. So what I'm going to do is just basically give you a sense of what soul food is, how it came to be, talk about a typical meal, and then we're going to go through the current trends of soul food, and then I'll be happy to answer your questions. You are highly encouraged to do social media. Unless you have something negative to say, then you can just hold on to that. I mean, there's really no reason to share that. All right. So let me tell you about my journey. So first of all, let me just say something up front. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. I know that has lost me immediately lost me street cred on the subject of soul food, barbecue, Southern food. But let me win you back. My parents are from the South. So my mom is from from Chattanooga, Tennessee. My dad is from Helena, Arkansas. So this is the food that I grew up eating. Fast forward, I was working in the Clinton White House, and that job ended. And at that time in my life, I wanted to be the senator from Colorado. I was thinking about how to get back to Colorado and start my political career, but the job market was really slow. I was watching a lot of daytime television. I'm not even going to tell you what shows. And then finally I said, I should read something. So I went to the bookstore and I got a book called Southern Food at Home, on the Road, in History. And in that book, the author, John Edgerton, wrote that the tribute to Black achievement in American cookery has yet to be written. I thought that was really interesting. So I emailed him out of the blue, and I just said, "Hey, Mr. Edgerton, you wrote this. I know you wrote this about 14 years ago, but do you still think this is true?" And he said, nobody's taken on the full story. And so with no qualifications at all, except for eating a lot of soul food and cooking it some, it launched me on the journey of writing the book, Soul Food, The Surprising Story of an American Cuisine, One Plate at a Time. I ended up winning the James Beard Award for that book. And the next book I wrote was The President's Kitchen Cabinet, which is a story of African-American presidential chefs. And my next book is going to be on the history of African-American barbecue, called Black Smoke, African Americans in the United States of Barbecue. That is coming out in April. So that's kind of my writing journey, but we're going to focus in on soul food. So one question I get asked a lot is, where does this term soul food come from? And, a lot of people say it's the 1960s, where you have these strong expressions of Black identity, Black is beautiful, Black power. But the earliest joining of the word soul and food in the English language actually goes back to Shakespeare. In Shakespeare's first play, The Two Gentlemen of Verona, you have two female characters, Julia and Lucetta, talking about this really sexy guy named Proteus. So Proteus walks by in one scene, and Julia says to Lucetta, "Oh, knowest thou not that his looks are my soul's food? Pity the death that I've pined in by longing for this food so long a time." So what we learn is not, even in the late 16th century, not unusual for two girlfriends to describe a guy as yummy. But for the next 400 years, soul food really had a religious connotation. So it meant doing anything to edify your spiritual life. So listening to a sermon, studying scripture, singing hymns. But then fast forward to the late 1940s, early 1950s, it takes a musical turn. So basically, you had these Black jazz artists who were really miffed because it seemed like white jazz artists were getting the most money, the most notoriety. It's almost like these white jazz artists had created this form that they felt they had created. So they took jazz to a place where they thought white musicians could not mimic the sound. And that was the sound of the Black church in the rural South. So in the late 40s, early 1950s, that gospel tinged jazz, they started calling soul and funky. And so it started gaining currency in the culture, and it started getting slapped onto other aspects of it. So it was really soul music first, soul brother, soul sister, soul food. What does happen in the 1960s is that the term does go mainstream, but then there's a conscious divorce. So basically, soul becomes Black and Southern becomes white, because Black power advocates were figuring out, how do we connect all of these disparate African Americans around the country? And one way to do that is through culture, and food was a great connector. So there was actually a manifesto leaked to the New York Times, which said that white people can't understand things like cornbread, greens, all of these typical Southern soul foods. Now, this was news to white Southerners because they had been eating the same food for 200 years. But we get that conscious divorce, and we're still living with that today. If I were to ask you, name somebody strongly associated with soul food on TV or in culture, right? Who would you name? You might struggle to find a name. But if I said the same thing about Southern food, I think other names come to you more easily. People like Paula Deen, Trisha Yearwood, Paula Deen's kids, that sort of thing. So one of the most vibrant discussions right now is this idea of culinary justice. Like, how do we have a discussion where Southern food is discussed so that African-American contributions are recognized? So if you're going to talk about African-American culture, one of the sources is Western Africa. And so when I define West Africa, I'm talking about a band of countries along the West Coast, starting with Senegal and Gambia in the north, going down to Angola in the south. And in West Africa, the typical meal is some kind of starch with a savory soup, stew, or sauce that's either served alongside or on top of that starch. So in Senegal, going all the way down to kind of the middle of Sierra Leone, that's an indigenous rice culture. So there was a lot of composed white rice dishes. More in the middle of the country is about sorghum and millet. But then when you start getting to Ghana, Nigeria, that's more tropical root country, so tropical yams, which are different from what we call yams, because what we call yams in the United States are really dark-fleshed sweet potatoes. So here's an example of a typical West African meal that I found at a restaurant in Denver. So on the left-hand side of your screen is something called fufu. And in this case, the fufu was pounded yam. And it's yam that's really mashed until it has the consistency of mashed potatoes. Then on the other side, you've got some tilapia fish steaks, along with the spinach, chili, and seeds kind of sauce. And the idea is you would break off a little bit of the fufu and then get over there and get some of that tilapia and then scoop up some of that sauce, and you would eat it all in one fell swoop. Food was delicious, but this restaurant closed. I think it had a lot to do with the name. It was called The Palace, Nigerian Food and Philly Cheesesteaks. You can see how that just didn't really work. Here's a representation of the Atlantic slave trade. The reason why I'm showing you this picture or this illustration is to show you that the 10 to 25 million people who crossed the Atlantic during the slave trade, only about 4% make it to what we call British North America. So that's why I argue that soul food is really a British meal with West African influences. But when you eat with someone in the Caribbean or in South America, someone who has African heritage, that is more of an Africanized meal with Western influences. So it's complete flip. And I think that has a lot to do with the autonomy that Africans in the Americas had over their food source, less so in British North America. Here's an example of a newspaper ad from that time period, Charleston, May 1st, 1769. If you look down towards the, not to the very bottom, but in the middle section there, it talks about the Windward Coast, which is the center of a rice country. So this is just to let you know that slaveholders knew definitely who was below deck. And typically in the Middle Passage, which is that trip across the Atlantic Ocean, which would go anywhere from 10 to 12 weeks, depending on where you left in the quote unquote old world and where you disembarked in the Americas, it could be 10 to 12 weeks. So typically during that horrific journey, enslaved Africans were kept below deck and only allowed to come up twice a day to exercise, bathe, and eat. And that's when a lot of the slave rebellions happened on these slave ships, because that was the main opportunity for those things to happen. So fast forward, we get to the rise of slavery in the American colonies, and grossly oversimplifying, essentially enslaved people, especially on the larger plantations, got a controlled amounts of food. And so once a week, they would get 5 pounds of some starch, and that could be a savory soup. That could be cornmeal, rice, or sweet potatoes. They got a couple of pounds of smoked meat. That was usually pork, but it could be dried, salted, or pickled. And then they got a jug of molasses. So the enslaved people had to figure out how to survive by foraging, gardening, hunting, fishing, all of these other things to supplement their diet. The interesting thing is we start to see a reconstitution of West African foodways. So people that were from rice country started asking for rice in their rations. That's the starch they wanted. If they were from root country, root crop countries, they started asking for sweet potatoes as their ration. And it's just an effort for people to try to recreate home in an alien environment. Here's an example of a plantation. I show you this because in the middle there, it's the pasture. So beyond the pasture would have been the place where the commodity crop was grown. That could be tobacco, could be cotton, it could be indigo. In the middle there, there's some numbers. They're kind of they're upside down, but the numbers were essentially where the enslaved people lived. Those were the slave quarters. And then below that, it says Negro Gardens. And so that was the plot of land that enslaved people were assigned to grow their own food. And below that, it says poultry ground. So in a lot of instances, the enslaved were allowed to grow their own food. And if they could grow food that they were familiar with from West Africa, they did so. So that's how things like okra, hibiscus, black-eyed peas, watermelons, type of rice, sesame seeds, that's how things like that got into the diet, because enslaved Africans were allowed to grow their own food and raise their own livestock. And then on the weekends and when the work schedule slowed, enslaved people were actually allowed to go to a nearby town and sell their excess produce or the animals. And we have instances of enslaved people actually purchasing their freedom by doing so. One thing to understand is that the typical day on a large plantation was essentially enslaved people woke up before dawn. They were fed out of a trough, usually crumbled cornbread and buttermilk. Then they would go work during the morning, and then during the midday meal, which was called dinner in the 1700s and 1800s, it's now called lunch. They would again eat out of a trough. That trough would be filled with seasonal vegetables. If there was any meat, it was really just to season the vegetables. It was not meat as an entree as we think of it. And they had some water, and then they had to go work again. And then after dark, they would have supper. And supper was just leftovers from that midday meal. So that was the typical day. So that food was very close to what we call vegan today. It was really only on the weekends or special occasions that people got the things that we think of when we think of soul food today. Things like fried chicken, barbecue, biscuits, the glorious cakes, all of that stuff. That was really special occasion food. So fast forward after emancipation, millions of African Americans leave the South for other parts of the country. This is known as the Great Migration, which is a 70-year migration period, starts in the 1910s, goes all the way to the 1970s. And so what I argue in my book is that soul food was really the food of these migrants, people who left the South and went to other places and tried to recreate home. And if they could do it with the same foods, again, they did that, but often they had to either substitute or improvise. And so soul food becomes a little bit different than Southern food. There's a lot of overlap, but soul food is the difference between say, canned peaches versus fresh peaches for your peach cobbler, dried black-eyed peas versus fresh ones, and then, only collard greens instead of a lot of the delicate greens like pokeweed or creasy greens or other things that just couldn't survive the long truck ride or train ride out of the South. So soul food takes root. Now, when people got to the new place, they were often poor, they were often struggling. And so, they did what they could to make do. But then once they got settled and started to prosper, they remembered the good times food of the old country. And so they would start eating those on a more regular basis. And so the interesting thing that happens is that soul food then becomes this basically when celebration food becomes more commonplace. Now, if you know anything about celebration food, it should only be eaten every once in a while. And so if you start eating this food on the regular, that's not so good for your body. So that's why I believe that soul food gets a bad rap for being inherently unhealthy and something that, you should limit because we're eating soul food out of context. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that when we get further along. All right, we could have the main slide again. Thank you. So let's go through a typical soul food meal. As I go through this meal, I know you're on mute, but if you want to applaud, if you want to say amen, whatever you want to do to show your love for this food, please do it. So typical entrees, you could have chicken that could be fried or smothered. Now, these are highlights from my national eating tour. To research this book, I ate my way through the country. So I went to 150 soul food restaurants in 35 cities and 15 states. You may be surprised that I'm still alive. I guess I am too. And if you are my Facebook friend, social media friend, I brought you along for the journey. So I would take a picture of the exterior of the restaurant and then the food that I'm eating. So this is fried chicken from Deborah's Kitchen in Philadelphia. This is the kind of fried chicken I love, papery thin, well-seasoned crust. When you bite into it, you hear a crunch and then very moist meat below. Love that. Fried fish. Catfish is the most popular, but tilapia, whiting, porgies, all kinds of fish show up in the soul food diet. And it makes sense because West Africans were, ate a lot of seafood. And so it makes sense that love for seafood carries over into the Americas. This is a place called Mittendorf's outside of New Orleans. The interesting thing about Mittendorf's is that they actually flatten the catfish. So it's almost like schnitzel. And then they fry it up with the cornmeal and everything. Also variety meat. So these are the funky cuts of meat like ham hocks, oxtails, turkey tips, you name it. The interesting thing is that with the rise of whole animal cooking, you're starting to see variety meats show up in fine dining contexts. So it just cracks me up that, you go to a fine dining restaurant, people are paying, $30 for oxtails. And they're saying, they're talking about, oh, the chef is so amazing, so daring to use the animal this way and to honor the animal, taking us to places we've never been before with food. And if you've been to a soul food restaurant, you're very used to having this kind of stuff. So that's a place called Bully's Soul Food in Jackson, Mississippi, a place that I love. Then you also chitlins, which are pig intestines. I have chitlins twice a year. I have them for Thanksgiving and New Year's Day. I know they're not for everyone. I'm sure there was a collective groan as soon as they saw this on the screen. But that's my family's chitlins pot. And, one thing is that people believe chitlins were wholly made for African Americans. Like it's the emblematic food for soul food because it just shows you that we're eating the stuff that white people don't want. But if you actually look at and go back and look at chitlin history, a lot of white people eat chitlins, and it was wealthy people's food several hundred years ago. And there are a lot of cultures around the world who eat guts. So it's not necessarily, I don't think we should look at it as a bad thing. Side dishes. So greens in soul food tradition, the popular greens are collard, kale, mustard, turnip, and cabbage. So if you've discovered kale in the last 5 to 10 years, welcome to the party. We've been eating them for about 300. And again, these are the bitter greens of Europe that are substituting for the bitter greens that West Africans had in their homeland. Again, this is a picture from, on the left-hand side is a picture from Bully's Soul Food. I love this picture because as you're eating there, periodically somebody will come out and strip greens and peel sweet potatoes. So you know you're getting fresh food. Black eyed peas, that is a picture from Marcus Samuelson's, Chef Marcus Samuelson's place, Red Rooster in Harlem. And Marcus Samuelson is a well-known personality on the Food Network. You know, good stuff. Now, black eyed peas are called peas, but they're actually beans. And the reason why I put them on the same slide here, as you know, people eat greens and black eyed peas on New Year's Day. Greens for folding money. Black eyed peas have multiple meanings, either for good luck, for coins, for prosperity. So those are linked in culture. Candy jams. Candy jams are really sweet potatoes. They're dark flesh sweet potatoes. And the reason why we call them yams is that basically in the 1920s, some Louisiana farmers wanted to create a sweet potato that they could distinguish in the market. So they bred a sweet potato with a dark orange flesh. And so that is why you can go to the grocery store, look at a big old bin. On one side, it'll say yams. The other side, it'll say sweet potatoes. Botanically speaking, they're pretty much the same plant, but it's different. So candy jams, you know, some people boil them, some people bake them, but you're essentially braving it in a delicious gravy of butter, brown sugar, cinnamon, other spices. Yeah. Mac and cheese. Now, I really wasn't going to include mac and cheese in my book because I thought, well, you know, it's so universal. There's no black angle here. But so many of my black friends threatened to slap me upside my head that I succumbed to peer pressure. So the interesting thing about mac and cheese is that the history goes way back. The earliest mac and cheese recipe that we have written down was in the 1390s. And it's in a book called The Form of Curry, which was the go-to cookbook for Queen Elizabeth I and Richard II. So it was royalty food. And the early recipe was just the macaroni noodles, Parmesan cheese, and butter. So over time, cream and other stuff gets added to the point where it reaches the goopy mess that we all know and love today. So it becomes basically, it was royalty food, then it becomes wealthy people's food. And so at the point that it's wealthy people's food in Europe, a lot of wealthy Americans traveling over to Europe get exposed to the dish. People like Thomas Jefferson and others, they fall in love with it and they bring it back to the United States. And so by the turn of the 1800s, 17th and 19th centuries, the 19th century, macaroni cheese was something that was a very popular dish in the South. It was called macaroni pie. And so if you look in manuscript cookbooks, people like Thomas Jefferson and other Southerners were serving it. And enslaved cooks were the ones who would make this dish. And so that's how it kind of enters Southern food and enters African-American foodways, because there's really no corollary to mac and cheese in Africa. There's very little dairy. West Africans have a higher incidence of lactose intolerance. So, you know, just dairy dishes are not common. So this is something fully embraced in the Americas. And interestingly, when I went around the country and interviewed elder African Americans, they are convinced that white people stole macaroni and cheese from black people, just like rock and roll, which is clearly not the case, but that belief pervades. Soul food breads. Okay, so of course there are wheat breads, but I think the most emblematic are cornbreads. Here are a couple of cornbread muffins at a place called the Hard Knocks Cafe in San Francisco. It's a soul food joint run by Asians, really good stuff. So, you know, you could have your cornbread muffins, cornbread sticks. You have, when I make cornbread, I usually make a cornbread in a cast iron skillet. So you're going to get a nice wedge from me. Hush puppies is another type of cornbread. If you don't know what hush puppies are, they're round balls of cornmeal that are seasoned and fried. The story about hush puppies for the next cocktail party you go to is basically some people are out in the woods. They're doing whatever. They're frying their fish up and doing the traditional preparation of fish coated with cornmeal, seasoned cornmeal. As they're frying the fish, the dogs that they brought along with them are smelling all of that good food, and they're yelping. They want some. So somebody decides to take some extra cornmeal, moisten it, form it into balls, fry it, and then give it to the dogs in order to hush the puppies. That's where that comes from. Another thing is hot sauce. Hot sauce is very popular in soul food tradition. Now, Tabasco is the world's best-selling hot sauce. I'm not a huge fan because it just doesn't have enough kick and seasoning for me. I tend to like the hot sauces like Frank's, Crystal, or Red Rooster shown here. And then you got pepper vinegar, which is that trapeze. And so essentially you get your chilies, put it in some kind of container, you pour in the vinegar and just let it seep. And then when it gets to the level of spiciness you want, you use that to season your food. And then it's a renewable resource because when you run out of vinegar, all you gotta do is just add some more. So believe it or not, this was healthcare. As planters, they didn't want to spend for medicine or anything like that. So there was a lot of kind of herbal cures and relying on folk medicine to cure diseases. But one thing they noticed is that as they gave enslaved people more chilies to include in their rations, the incidence of certain diseases declined. And so that became a staple kind of in plantation foodways. And hot sauce was definitely thought of as medicine. I found a pharmacology journal from 1796, and the remedy for strep throat was to have a capsicum gargle. And a capsicum gargle was vinegar and mashed up chili peppers. So basically you mix that all together and you gargled with that. Now you turn around any bottle of hot sauce, look at the recipe, it'll say chilies, vinegar, spices. So people were gargling with hot sauce. I also talk about red drinks because I believe red Kool-Aid is the official soul food drink. Now, there is something you have to understand. In soul food culture, red is a color and a flavor. We don't get caught up in calling things cherry or strawberry or that it has hints of cranberry. It's just red. Now, there is a generational shift happening. There's a lot of youngins that seem to like purple and blue. And as I write in my book, I do believe the children are our future, that we should teach them well and let them lead the way, but not with Kool-Aid because they're messing it up. But two ancestral red drinks come from West Africa over to the Americas. One is hibiscus tea. In some cultures, it's called bissap. It has other names. Hibiscus is native to West Africa. And so they, as a hospitality drink, they would get some water, take the red petals of that flowering plant, and then sweeten it to taste. So you steep the leaves in there, color it red, and then sweeten it to taste. Another is cola. There are white cola nuts and reddish cola nuts, and those were also a hospitality drink. When somebody was coming over, you would put the red cola nuts in some water, let them steep, and sweeten it to taste. So those drinks all come across the Americas. Hibiscus is probably the one that's most prevalent. In Jamaica, it's called sorrel, and it's a Christmas time drink because that's when the plant flowers. And then sorrel makes its way around the Latin America and South America. And so in a lot of Spanish-speaking countries, it's called agua de Jamaica or flor de Jamaica. So Jamaica flower or, Jamaica water. And so when you go to a taqueria and you have agua de Jamaica, you're drinking a riff off a West African drink. I included sweet tea here because a lot of people think that sweet tea is part of soul food. I just don't think so. It's definitely a part of Southern food culture. But I have to tell you, when I went to soul food restaurants around the country, I just didn't really see sweet tea that often. There was always a red drink. It could be Kool-Aid, it could be carbonated beverage, it could be punch. I just didn't see sweet tea that much. Then there's desserts, sweet potato pie. And what you'll find with soul food desserts, a lot of them are just a riff off old British desserts. So sweet potato pie, if you look at recipes for carrot pie from 400 years ago, same spicing. Same method. So you can see just one orange root crop being swapped for another. Henry VIII was grubbing on sweet potato tartlets centuries ago. So that just shows you how far back these things go. Peach cobbler arrives in the mid 1800s. You don't really see reference to this dessert beforehand. And the early ways that they made peach cobbler is they would have a fire, they would have a big cast iron tub, and they would just put the peaches in and add butter, sugar, and the spices. And then they would take leftover biscuit dough and just kind of cover the top of that fruit mixture. And then they would put a cast iron lid over it and then take coals from the fire and put them on top of the lid. So that's how they would cook it. They left the pits in the peach cobbler. So I think that's dangerous, but that's how they made peach cobbler back then. It was only later with the improvement in cooking technology that you started to get a bottom crust for the peach cobbler when made in an oven. So that comes later. Banana pudding. So I am being very vulnerable here because I'm showing you a banana pudding that I made, and you can tell that my meringue game is not tight. And, I'm working on it. But banana pudding is a riff off an old British dessert called a trifle. And essentially, it's some cream element and bread element. So the bread here are vanilla wafers. The cream element is a custard, and then you would add bananas. Pound cake, similar story. Pound cake goes way back. Now, just focus on the pound cake on this plate because I was at an all-you-can-eat place, and they were running out of time. They were going to close, so I just grabbed as many desserts as I could. So just focus on the pound cake. But old British dessert, pound of sugar, pound of flour, basically long-time dessert. This, I would say pound cake is the one dessert that I find African-American cooks really fierce about in terms of being prideful of their recipes, holding on to it. And I think it's because it's such a simple recipe that you can show your virtuosity as a cook when you make it. All right, soul food innovation. We've got chicken and waffles. This is from a place in Denver. That's a red velvet waffle because we know that color red does not exist in nature. So chicken and waffles, the story goes it was created in Harlem because basically people were coming out of the nightclubs at 2 a.m. So too late for dinner, too early for breakfast. So this guy named Joseph Wells creates this hybrid dish called chicken and waffles. It's kind of a brilliant story, but it's not true because chicken and waffles goes way back, all the way back to Europe. So German immigrants show up in the United States with a creamed chicken and waffle tradition. They take root in Pennsylvania. They're called Pennsylvania Dutch, which is Pennsylvania Deutsch. And so eventually that cream chicken and waffle combination was very popular. In fact, it goes up to Philadelphia and becomes a high-class dish. Eventually, even catfish and waffles was popular. But the dish goes south, and so the cream chicken becomes fried. And again, by 1800, you've got a lot of Southerners like Thomas Jefferson who are serving this dish as part of a Saturday morning breakfast, as a hunt breakfast. So it was a rich white people's food for about a century, and then for whatever reason, it falls out of favor. And I think that created the cultural space for Joseph Wells to create that marketing myth, which was brilliant. Okay, this is going to shock you. I wanted to brace you. Ladies and gentlemen, the KoolAid Pickle, also known as the Koolickle. So if you've never had this, this is how you make a KoolAid Pickle. You get a jar of already made kosher dill pickles, take the pickles out of the jar, poke holes in the pickle or cut them, and then you make Kool-Aid out of the pickle brine, put the pickles back in, close the jar, leave it there for 2 weeks, then take them out and eat them. If you like to taste the pickles in a Kool-Aid, it is just a sweet and sour combination. If you don't like either one of these things, this is one of the nastiest things you'll ever put in your mouth. So, the question is, where does this come from? And so as I spoke to the elders, I found out this. There are people that would basically, as little kids, they would go to the corner store, they would get those really big pickles, cut off the tip, and then they would put a candy cane that had a hole in the middle. So, or not a candy cane, a peppermint stick that had a hole in the middle. So it was almost like a straw. And they would put it in the soft part of the pickle, and then they would let the pickle juice dissolve it. And then they would suck on it. So it was a similar sweet and sour combination. And they would also put Jawbreakers, Jolly Ranchers, all kinds of candy could go on. And then really hardcore people would just pour Kool-Aid powder or pixie dust powder, pixie stick powder over that and just munch on it. That's hardcore, though. Nashville Hot Chicken is another kind of late innovation. It's really trendy. Essentially, this started in a black restaurant in Nashville, Tennessee called Prince's Hot Chicken. Story goes is that there was this guy, he was a womanizer. He's cheating on his woman, true to form. And so she decides to get back to him by making his favorite thing, hot chicken, but she makes a super spicy version of it to burn his mouth out. And he ends up loving it. And so they opened up a restaurant, which exists to this day, Prince's Hot Chicken. So whenever you hear Nashville Hot Chicken, please remember to think of Prince's. There was a documentary done of the restaurant, and one guy says that he goes to the restaurant, orders the hottest type of chicken, gets into, then brings it home, takes off all his clothes, gets into a tub full of ice, cold water and ice cubes, and then he eats the chicken. That's how hot it is. When I ate my way through the country, I say LA gets the prize for the weirdest soul food. So this is a place called Tony's Soul Burger. So I had a Thanksgiving burger. Here's the Thanksgiving burger: bun, all turkey patty, a layer of cornbread dressing, some cheese, gravy, collard greens, cranberries, and a fried egg, and a sweet potato puree, and then whole wheat bun. Actually was very good. And I also went to a place called Soul Dog. So I had a soul food hot dog. Here's a soul food hot dog: bun, wiener, collard green and cucumber relish, sweet potato puree drizzle, crumbled bacon bits. Slamming. Both of those places closed. One thing I liked about Soul Dog is that they, if you ever saw the show Good Times, when the credits were rolling at the end, there's a mural where everybody has like a pool stick and it's a joyous scene. So they replicated the mural, except here everybody has a hot dog. I just thought that was awesome. Too bad that these places closed. Now let's talk about soul food trends. So in addition to traditional soul food, you got Down Home Healthy. Down Home Healthy is taking out the salt, the fat, and the sugar. This is a popular recipe in my book. This is Creole broiled catfish. So all you do is get a catfish fillet, rub some olive oil on it, put on your favorite Creole seasoning, and just broil it for 7 minutes till it's opaque. Really good. This is a recipe from an ex-girlfriend. So I'm going to pause and offer a pro tip, because the good folks at RIT care about all of your health, including your love life. So I will just say this: if you are dating or married to somebody who's a good cook, do what you can to stay with that person. But if you notice that things are starting to get rocky, I can tell you from personal experience, it's a lot easier to get the recipes before you break up. All right, pro tip. Upscale soul food is the exact opposite of down home. And upscale soul food essentially is, heritage meats, heirloom vegetables, using duck fat, exotic spices. So the idea is to really up the ante and just work on presentation and just what goes on to that. Another trend, though, that is the strongest is vegan. Most soul food restaurants are vegan in terms of their side dishes now. And vegan shows up all over the place. And remember, it's not an oxymoron. It's really a homecoming, because this is closer to what enslaved Africans and African Americans ate. And arguably, a lot of what was eaten in West Africa could be called vegan. So moving from left to right, you've got some southern fried tofu, some vegan mac and cheese, and some vegan collard greens with a cayenne pepper lemonade. The tofu was good. The middle of it reminded me actually of catfish more than chicken. The mac and cheese was using almond milk, and so it had the texture of kind of stuffed tortellini, if you've ever had that. And it wasn't creamy, because vegan is not about cream. So, it was good, but I wasn't feeling it so much, because I think of mac and cheese, I'm thinking creamy. And the collard greens were as good as any, because, if you can season vegetables properly, you can do it in a way that you don't even miss the meat. Another thing that's happening is fusion. So there's a guy in Atlanta, he calls himself the Blaxican. Don't get mad at me, that's his own name. And he's doing things like collard green quesadillas. Another thing that I'm seeing around the country are soul food filled egg rolls. So here's an example of chicken and rice and gravy in an egg roll. Some have mac and cheese, others have, collard greens or candy jam. So it's just playing around with ethnic cuisines in the soul food format. And the last thing I will talk about is the prospects of soul food in space. So you may not know this, but periodically there's a group of people who are living on a volcano in Hawaii. And the reason why they're living there is because the soil is very similar to the soil on Mars. And so they're trying to figure out if any peopled mission to Mars were to stay there, can they grow food? And so they live in this module. When they leave, they have to wear a spacesuit because they want to simulate all of the conditions, physically, psychologically, everything that would be involved in having a mission, some kind of base on Mars. And so a lot of the things they're looking at are soul food. They're looking at sweet potatoes, hibiscus, okra, greens, especially for the flight over there, because any flight to Mars is going to take a year at least. And so there's no way they could put enough food on the spacecraft to escape Earth's atmosphere. It would just be too heavy. And so they're really experimenting on what they can do en route and how they could have a renewable resource. And if there's anything, it's greens. So I actually had a chance to go to Johnson Space Control outside of Houston, Texas, because that's where they do a lot of the food testing. And I talked to them about the prospects of soul food in space, and I found out there were two non-starters. The first one is cornbread. You can't have cornbread in space because cornbread crumbles, And in a zero gravity environment, your spaceship is just going to be straight nasty. The other thing I found out is that you can't have chitlins because you can't roll down the window in space. I know, I'm sorry. I just couldn't resist. That joke was just right there for me. So thank you for joining me for this tour of soul food. Please find me on the web at soulfoodscholar.com, Soul Food Scholar Facebook page, or you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Soul Food Scholar. And with that, I will stop and take your questions.
Okay. Adrian, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go through some of these chats because they were cutting you up about the sweet tea. They were saying, let's see here. Sweet South equals sweet tea. North Carolina equals sweet tea. South Carolina has nothing but sweet tea.
Well, see, that's the thing. They weren't listening to me because what I was saying is when you get outside the South, you don't see sweet tea that much. So I think sweet tea is Southern, not necessarily soul. Because, and this is just my experience eating in all these restaurants. Now, I will say this. Sweet tea is now showing up much more outside the South than when I was first writing this book because McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, all of these restaurants are now putting out sweet tea. So there's a lot more of it now than there was before. But seriously, if you go to a soul food joint outside of the South, you're not going to see sweet tea. I'm sorry.
Okay. Wilson Darko, now I only call him out because I've known him since he was a student. He's now an alum. He said, wondering if we'll discuss the legend of the Luther. I'm not sure what that is.
The legend of the
Luther.
Oh, so the Luther is the Luther is a hamburger, which basically has donuts as the bun. So supposedly Luther Vandross loved this thing, and I forgot. There are various people who claim that they've invented the Luther. I don't know if he actually invented that. I've had one Luther. It's all right, but it's not something I crave.
Gotcha. Let's see here. Pam said that she would try the peppermint pickles. And then someone said, I've seen this one done with lemons, not pickles.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So as I've gone across the country and shown that slide, people in various places have said, yeah, we used to do that with lemons. And I think that would actually be more enjoyable, but with lemons and oranges. And basically the peppermint stick functions as a straw.
Okay. I think when you were talking about the tea, the hibiscus tea, Wilson again said Ghanans, I guess, call it sobolo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's different names. So Bissop is the one I think that's maybe prevalent, but yeah, there's different names depending on which society. So there are at least 3 or 4 different names for that drink.
Gotcha. And you mentioned something about cayenne lemonade.
Yeah, that was at the vegan place. Cayenne pepper lemonade. It was really good. Really? Just a lemonade with a little kick of spice.
Interesting.
Pretty awesome.
Let's hear. Okay, so grits with or without cheese?
Without cheese. I mean, I'll eat them with cheese, but without. I actually thought you were going to ask something else that's more controversial about grits.
Uh-oh. What did you think I was going to ask you?
Salt or sugar? Salt and pepper or sugar?
Salt and pepper right here.
Okay, that's what most people say. You're with my dad. Now, as growing up as a kid, I put sugar on it, so I'm used to sugar.
Oh no, my husband's family, they're from Texas. They do that, and my family's from Alabama, and they put pepper.
Yep.
Now, do you consider barbecue ribs soul food?
I used to because a lot of soul food restaurants have a barbecue option. But then as I learned more about barbecue, I think it's its own thing. And in truth be told, a lot of restaurants, soul food restaurants doing barbecue are really baking it. So, I don't really consider that barbecue per se. So I think it's its own thing. I mean, definitely related, but its own thing.
Let's see here. I think when we were talking about the grits, someone actually said honey.
I could see that. I mean, because it's just like putting sugar on it, but I don't think that's a wide practice.
Pamela Christopher, whom I know very well, she said grits and sardines.
What? Okay, well that's fish and grits, right? I mean, that's a version of it. I like fish and grits.
Oh God, I'm sorry. It's
I've never heard of that though.
Oh my God. Okay. I have someone who here says, I'm a high school teacher. What advice would you give to young people about the importance of food?
So one thing I would say is learn as much as you can about your food because food tells a story and it talks about your culture. And don't reflexively hate your food because other people do. I mean, there's a much to love about soul food in our African American food cultures. So one is the cool thing is that there are more people like me who are now writing about food, and so you can get the backstory. So one thing is to learn about your food, learn about the context, study it, and then see what will build your health, including not only on your body but your mental health. Because I think one of the great things about soul food is sitting down with friends and family, loved ones, and having some great food. And one of the things that people say about soul food is that it's slave food, or that it's not worthy of celebration, or it needs a warning label because it's going to kill you. And I wrote this book to really just sort out fact and fiction about that. And I found out that the slavery experience is one aspect of the food narrative for African Americans, but not the whole thing. Soul food is very complex. And then the other part is thinking that soul food's going to kill you. First of all, you have to understand it's celebration food, so it's meant to be eaten infrequently. And then the other thing is that if you actually look at what nutritionists are telling us to eat, more dark leafy greens, more sweet potatoes, more fish, hibiscus, okra, all of these things are part of the soul food family. So it's a matter of how these foods are prepared, in what context you're eating them, and then understand just moderation. You may think you have a constitutional right to eat certain foods every day, right? Like the glorious stuff, but that was not meant to be eaten on the regular.
Gotcha. Denicia Ortiz asks, can you speak to the variety of additions in the food and how they vary by regions? An example, vinegar, hot sauce, or sugar and greens, sugar and black eyed peas, cheese variations in mac and cheese, hot sauce on chitlins, nutmeg, cinnamon, sugar, light brown, dark brown, regular, and yams, and where and why did these variations come from?
Wow, so that's a lot. So just I'll speak to a couple. So the ones, like, as I ate my way through the country, the most variants I found were in things like hot sauce, and it wasn't only brand names, but it was the type of hot sauce. So I spoke about pepper vinegar earlier. I really only saw pepper vinegar kind of on the East Coast, like the Carolinas, Virginia. When you got more into the deep South, I started to see more, red sauces. Um, and then, greens like collards were dominant in, say, like the very deep South, Georgia, Alabama, places like that, Mississippi. But then when you started to go up to the upper South, I saw more mustard greens and
Right.
turnip greens. And then if you go further north up the Atlantic coast, kale was more dominant, say, in like old recipes in Maryland,
Mm,
places like that. And you had creasy greens, pokeweed, and poke salad in some parts of the Carolinas. So I saw more variants there. And then cornbread. A lot of places would have a cornbread wedge, but then when I was in certain parts of Mississippi, I would see corn cakes instead. And then in some places you would see a corn muffin. And one thing I really remarked upon, being in Mississippi, is we would order a dish of vegetables, and one steamed okra would be laid atop the cross like it was a condiment. And I thought that was really interesting. And the only other place that I saw that was in Chicago. So
mm.
that told me, I was like, okay, these people must be from Mississippi, because you can see the transplanting of a Southern foodway in a different place. But I love that question because it really does indicate a lot of variations. And I have to say that I just didn't get that deep into it. And some of the things I just didn't even think about as I was eating. But now, as I go eat my way in places, I'm paying a lot more attention to those kind of variations.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's see here. Marie asked, I was wondering what was the African sweet potato name was. What was it?
So, so the African had tropical yams, and so I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right, but one word for yam was like NYAM, which also in some countries was the verb to eat. So that shows you how central it was to the diet.
Mhm.
Um, one thing that was really interesting to me is that as sweet potatoes get introduced into West Africa, they were called the white man's yam, and that was not a compliment. So that was just kind of interesting to me. So yeah, depending on the culture, they had different names for these. Eventually, sweet potatoes do get embraced. I just don't know what they called them, other than disparaging white man's yam.
Well, I've noticed that people ask, like, there's a difference. Some people call them yams, some people call them sweet potatoes. And then you see some that are very orange, and then some are a little paler. Can you speak to that?
So in this country, well, technically speaking, yams should only be applied to dark fleshed sweet potatoes. So those really orange sweet potatoes. Anything else should really be called a sweet potato. But it's just a marketing gimmick because they're all sweet potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, specifically the yam should be the dark fleshed sweet potato. But even that changed over time because in the late 1800s there was something called a yellow yam, which they called a yaller yam. And so it's just over time, different foods get different nicknames, and so it just really kind of depends.
Let's see here. Cynthia asks, "What's the history of pecan pie?"
I actually don't know the history of pecan pie because I just didn't really look at it as something. So that's an interesting question. I'm sorry I can't give you any shed any light on that because I can't think of any pie that's like it with the Caro syrup and everything. There are a lot of custard pies and chess pies, but the pecan pie seems to be something different. So I'm sorry I don't know the history of that one.
And Robert asks, "Would Jamaican food like curry chicken, rice and peas be considered a type of soul food?"
Wow. I don't think so because I'm drawing a very specific line as to what soul food is. I'm defining it as that migration food. But it does raise an interesting question. One of the things I've always wondered is why wasn't there a stronger influence of Caribbean food and soul food? And I think it's because of the tensions between Native African Americans and Caribbean immigrants. Because it should have happened. I mean, in certain places you will see some cultural exchange and influences, but once you get away from kind of those port cities, you just really don't see Caribbean influence at all. And I've always wondered about that because it should be stronger in the cuisine given the cultural proximity and contact.
Interesting. I'm trying to think. I know there's another question in here. Someone said, "I've never heard of Creasy Greens."
Oh, really? Okay.
I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of that? Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, they're you hear about them more kind of in rural North Carolina, but it's what would be something similar? Have you ever heard of rapini?
No.
Okay. I don't know what to tell you then, but yeah, Creasy, Creasy. Look it up. Creasy Greens.
Is it similar to a collard green or?
No, it's more delicate. I want to say maybe
Or like
more like mustard and turnip, but I don't even know if that's really accurate. It's hard for me to describe them. They're not as sturdy as collards and kale, though.
Now, can you speak to? I know that was it South. The Carolinas have the Geechee culture. Can you speak to that and their food and?
Oh wow, the Geechee culture! I mean, so beautiful. So Geechee culture is essentially Gichigala is essentially the people in the Carolinas, especially those off the shore in those islands, and that culture is threatened because there's so much pressure to now develop their land and turn it into resorts.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's really sad what's happening. But people are holding on, and so for a lot of reasons, the acculturation in those areas have a strong African influence. So if we want to see just glimpses of what West African culture was like, those are the areas where we would find it. And so they have their own kind of language. And one of the coolest things that's happening right now is you've got people like Chef BJ Dennis and others who are actually trying to revive Gullah culture and its food and celebrate that and spread that around the world. And so there's going to be a focused restaurant coming soon. I'm blanking on the name of that restaurant. It's going to be in Columbia, South Carolina, I believe. So yeah, very strong culture, own language, music, storytelling, and it's endangered right now. So when you hear about low country cuisine, the food of Charleston and Savannah, that is heavily influenced by Gullah Geechee culture. So shrimp and grits used to be called breakfast shrimp. That's part of the culture. Fish and grits, a lot of composed rice dishes, Hoppin' John, a lot of seafood boils and stews. Yeah, it's just amazing food, amazing culture.
Hope Williams asks, Gichigala eat a lot of seafood? Like, do they?
Yes, they do because they're island people basically. So off the shore of the Carolinas and the Atlantic Ocean. So yeah, a lot of seafood and a lot of wild game is part of their diet.
Interesting. Well, in the interest of time, I'd like to say, Adrian, thank you for sharing your expertise with our alumni and friends today. Today, we've had registrants as close as Rochester in California and as far away as Croatia, Mexico, and Switzerland. So,
Wow.
thank you all for joining us. To learn more about Adrian Miller or to purchase any of his books, please visit adrianmiller.com. And that's ADRIANE Miller.com. You can follow Adrian on social media at Soul Food Scholar on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. There are a few virtual events planned in the coming weeks, and the Alumni Association would like to include you in as many as possible. On February 11th, the College of Engineering and Technology, CET, is hosting the Rising Star Alumni Awards. The ceremony recognizes alumni who graduated from CET within the past 5 to 10 years and recognizes CET alumni for their outstanding achievements early in their careers and for significant public service contributions and for helping to advance the careers of new professionals. On Wednesday, February 17th, sign up for What's Your Diversity? This is a bi-monthly storytelling experience that invites RIT alums, students, and employees to share their definition of diversity and explain how it has impacted their lives. The program occurs on Wednesdays with alternating start times at 9 and at 12 Eastern Standard Time to allow for our global campuses to participate. In closing, we ask that you please exit the webinar by closing your live storm window, and please let us know what you think about tonight's webinar and if you have any ideas for future webinars. Again, Adrian, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this evening. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Stay healthy. Stay connected at rit.edu/alumni/events. Good night.